first concept is that every person really is different, and you have to take a look at that particular person's situation and then work through that. And configuring the macronutrient composition for each person really is an individualized type thing within some limits. So in a patient with non-renal disease, you really don't have to worry about protein. I'm not aware of any literature that shows high protein, what we call high protein, the numbers you talked about, 1.5, 1.6 gram per kilo per day. There's no literature about protein causing renal disease. There is literature that dates back into the early 1990s with the modification of diet and renal disease studies that showed that if you restricted protein, you would prolong the length of time until there was end-stage renal disease. It didn't alter the outcome. It just prolonged the length of time. So everybody got all excited about that, and that's okay, great. We need to lower protein because we're going to kill our patients with kidney disease, and we don't want to do that. Then we found the other problem is that if you limit protein too much, you develop sarcopenia. People don't do well. You have to have protein in order to live. Protein's essential for life. So there's been a lot of changes over time. In a practical sense, from a weight management perspective, if we can have people get 90 to 120 grams of protein per day across a population, that gives you enough frequency of feeding and enough leucine, because it turns out that the essential amino acid leucine is one of the key drivers for muscle preservation and for protein synthesis. And you need about 3 grams of leucine per bolus of protein spread out through the day, which winds up being about 90 to 100 grams or 120 grams, even more, of quality protein per day. So in order to get that, you've sort of got to get enough generic protein, if you will. So how do you optimize protein, knowing that higher protein helps maintain muscle preservation, acts as a substrate for glucose production so that people have steady blood sugars? How do you keep people healthy and not hurt their kidney? And you can do that by following along and following renal function. And the obesity medicine guy, I just call my nephrologist and I say, hey, look, Mrs. So-and-so, she's, I'd like to use 1.1 gram per kilo per day for her. I'd like to put her on around 90 to 100, let's just pick a number, 90 to 100 grams per day of protein. Is that a problem? Most of the time, they would say, no, that's fine. Let's follow this. And then you follow GFR, and you follow creatinine, and you follow proteinuria, things like that, and make sure that you're not harming the situation. Interestingly, it's very, very uncommon for those types of protein levels we're talking about, even in patients with stage 3 renal disease. You see improvement, and most likely I assume because of the weight loss and the lower inflammatory condition overall, we would often see GFR improve. We would often see proteinuria improve. And in fact, in a dramatic example of that is in non-surgical patients who come in with diabetes. We put them on a high protein program. It would be, say, pick up some numbers here, give you examples, 120 grams of protein per day, less than 100 grams of carbohydrate a day, and let's say 50 to 60 grams of fat to come in around 1,100 calories. You have to do the math and make sure I just got that right. But the point is, it's reduced carbohydrates under 100 grams or so, protein in that 90 to 120 grams a day is a minimum. And we would see their microalbumin, it would just disappear. You'd be checking their urines. Your kidney function practically improved. That was where I first saw it, was in the patients with type 2 diabetes. And it's like, and that was novel. There weren't a lot of studies out around this stuff. So everybody working in a reduced carb environment is saying, well, what are we going to do with folks? It turns out that there really are no downsides. And the